I don't know why this summer feels different, but the moment I saw him again standing at the edge of my cousin's garden, sunglasses pushed into his hair, a faint smirk tugging at his lips, I knew something was about to shift, maybe not in the world, but definitely in me. We hadn't seen each other in almost a year, yet he still carried that same maddening calm, like nothing could shake him, like he already understood people better than they understood themselves, able to see straight through their bravado and into their nerves. He had always been like that, quiet, observant, a little smug, and impossibly magnetic. My cousin had invited a group of us to their countryside cottage for the weekend. It's a tradition they do every year to connect with nature. Usually, it's just barbecues, card games, and me pretending I enjoy kaying. But this year was different. He was coming, my cousin's friend, let's call him Callum. He wasn't family, but he might as well have been. He'd been too. Enough of our dinners stayed over enough times and blended into enough gatherings. Still, he always carried himself like an outsider who had chosen to belong only on his own terms. When I was younger, I used to watch him, always wondering what it was about him that drew people closer, what made them hang on every word. And now here I was, 24 years old, supposedly past childish crushes and stolen glances, supposedly confident, composed, and definitely not the kind of guy who blushes when an old family friend tosses him a lazy grin across the lawn. But God, that grin! We arrived late Friday afternoon. The smelled of pine needles and fatting sunlight. The sky melted into soft orange as we unpacked. The cottage was old and creaky in the best way, with warped floors and mismatched furniture that somehow made it feel alive. There were 4 bedrooms for 6 of us, which meant doubling up. I pretended not to care when Callum dropped his duffel bag on the floor of my room like it was the most natural thing in the world. Like my heart wasn't already doing that ridiculous flutter I thought I'd groaned. He raised an eyebrow. You cool with this? I nodded too quickly. Yeah, of course, I muttered, before busying myself with a stack of books on the windowsill like some nervous librarian. Heat crept up my neck. He made himself at home with the same unshakable ease. Shirt tugged over his head in one smooth motion, muscles shifting beneath golden skin, the tattoo on his shoulder catching the last of the light. I looked away, pretending to check my phone, even though there was no signal out here. Typical. You still reading those weird psychology thrillers? He asked, nodding at my pile. Only the ones with hot detectives and unresolved trauma, I joked. He laughed, low, rich, genuine. The kind of laugh that makes the air feel heavy, that sinks into your bones like warmth you don't want to let go of. The room wasn't cold. There were other people around, my cousin, his girlfriend, 2 of their friends. Yet somehow every time we gathered at the fire pit or crossed paths in the cramped kitchen, it felt like Callum's presence grew louder each time his shoulder brushed mine, each time he leaned close to whisper a joke, each time he gave me that smile meant just for me. I felt it. Still, he always carried himself like an outsider who had chosen to belong only on his own terms. When I was younger, I used to watch him, always wondering what it was about him that drew people closer, what made them hang on every word. And now here I was, 24 years old, supposedly past childish crushes and stolen glances, supposedly confident, composed, and definitely not the kind of guy who blushes when an old family friend tosses him a lazy grin across the lawn. But God, that grin! We arrived late Friday afternoon. The smelled of pine needles and fatting sunlight. The sky melted into soft orange as we unpacked. The cottage was old and creaky in the best way, with warped floors and mismatched furniture that somehow made it feel alive. There were 4 bedrooms for 6 of us, which meant doubling up. I pretended not to care when Callum dropped his duffel bag on the floor of my room like it was the most natural thing in the world. Like my heart wasn't already doing that ridiculous flutter I thought I'd grown. That restless ache in my chest, the same one I always carried, the ache that came with knowing I wanted more, mixed with the fear of what it might mean if I said it out loud. This weekend was supposed to be a break, a little fresh air. Instead, it felt like walking straight into the storm I had spent years pretending wasn't there, and the worst part was I didn't want to walk away this time. Callum and I hadn't grown up together, but sometimes it felt as though we had. He met my cousin at uni, first-year housemates who bonded over late night takeaways and some shared hatred of group presentations. Ever since then, he had drifted into our family's orbit, and nobody minded. In fact, everyone adored him for it. He was charming in that low-effort way that made you want to try harder around him. The first time we properly spoke was years ago during a holiday gathering. I was 18, painfully awkward, hiding in the kitchen, pretending I knew how to carve a turkey. He wandered in with a half-empty glass of wine, leaned on the counter beside me and said, "You look like you're auditioning for a horror film." I laughed too hard and dropped the knife. He still teases me about that moment, like it's our private running joke. "Try not to murder the potatoes this time," he quipped earlier that evening as I mashed them with more force than necessary. I rolled my eyes, but the smile slipped through anyway. "Shut up, you still think boiling pasta counts as cooking, and yet I've survived this long," he shot back. Tragic, really. That was us, constant low-key teasing, like we were each other's favorite distraction. But under all the ribbing there was something more, a quiet comfort I couldn't explain, something about the way he made me feel noticed, even in a room full of louder voices. He listened not only with his ears but with his eyes, like he could read me from the twitch of a smile or the way I shifted conversation. That first night in the cottage, we stayed up late playing board games in the lounge with the others. Callum sat cross-legged on the floor beside me, our knees brushing each time one of us moved. I don't know if he noticed, but I did every single time. At one point he leaned close to whisper a joke about my cousin's over-the-top dice rolling. I caught the faint trace of his cologne, something warm, woody, and grounding, and clean, the kind of scent that made me want to lean in closer. I didn't, but I thought about it. The next morning brought the complication. We had all planned a hike, nothing ambitious, just a trail behind the cottage that curved through the woods and ended at a quiet stream. But in the chaos of breakfast and packing, someone realized we were one sleeping bag short for the planned night under the stars. Callum was the one who said it casually, like it meant nothing. "I don't mind sharing." I froze mid-toast. My cousin raised an eyebrow. "With who?" Callum glanced at me, then shrugged. "You okay with that?" "Yeah," I answered, my voice just a little too high. "Sure, no problem." Inside, my heart was pounding like I had already sprinted the trail. The hike itself was uneventful, except for the number of times Callum offered me his hand over roots or ditches, even when I didn't need it. "You're the clumsy one," I muttered once, trying to hide how long his touch lingered. "Maybe," he said, grinning, "but at least I'm charming about it." That night, as the fire cracked and voices dipped into drowsy murmurs, we bundled into our sleeping bags. The sky above was wide open, hundreds of stars blinking through the trees. The others drifted off quickly, lulled by the hum of insects and the fatting warmth of the fire. Callum and I lay side by side in one bag, zipped together, both pretending we were perfectly at ease. "This okay?" he asked softly, his voice just above a whisper. Our arms touched, now bare skin against bare skin. My Breath caught before I managed to nod. Yeah, it's warm, too warm, he teased. His tone low. Shut up, I muttered. He chuckled, then went quiet. For a long stretch we just lay there, eyes on the sky, hearts pounding too loudly in our chest. Then he shifted slightly, his fingers brushing mine beneath the cover. He didn't pull away, neither did I. We stayed like that, suspended in something neither of us had the courage to name. My mind spun with a mess of what-ifs and don't be stupid and maybe too many may. And the worst part, I kept imagining what it would be like if he turned to face me, if he reached up to touch my jaw, if he kissed me. I imagined it so vividly I had to remind myself it hadn't happened, but he didn't seem to mind. He didn't shy away, if anything. He seemed closer, his breath slower, softer. I stayed awake far too long, tracing the stars with my eyes while my imagination traced the shape of his hand. Every time he shifted, I caught myself holding my breath. At one point, he whispered, "You ever wonder about things turning out differently?" I turned my head slightly. "What do you mean?" He kept his gaze on the sky, like if you made one different choice, said something you were too scared to say. I swallowed hard. "Yeah, all the time." He nodded but said nothing else, and for the first time I wondered if maybe I wasn't the only one holding something back. It happened the next afternoon, after the rest of the group decided to head back early. My cousin's girlfriend had twisted her ankle on uneven ground. It wasn't serious, but it gave everyone an excuse to pack up camp and return to the cottage a day earlier than planned. Everyone except me and Callum, we'd gone off ahead on a separate trail, hoping to explore a ridge my cousin had pointed out on the map. By the time we made it back to the stream, the others were gone. So was our ride. Callum checked his phone and frowned. No signal. No kidding, I muttered, already noticing the sky slipping darker. We had spent too long at the ridge, laughing about nothing, pretending time didn't matter. He just grinned, unfazed. We could walk back, but it'll take hours. I glanced at the sky again. Dusk was already creeping in, and with it came the cold. "So, what, we just stay here?" I asked. "Why not?" He shrugged. "We've got the tent, some snacks. It's not like we've never done this before." True, but not alone. Not just us. The others had taken one of the sleeping bags. All we had left was the zip-together double we'd used the night before. Suddenly more of a statement without the group around to make it casual. "Unless you're scared," he teased, smirking as he nudged my shoulder. I shoved him back, laughing. "Terrified of your terrible jokes." We set up the tent in near silence, not awkward but heavy. Every brush of our hands on the mat, every glance as we tugged at the zipper, every small laugh. It all felt weighted, like something unspoken was just waiting to surface. Inside the tent it was tight, our bags stacked near the flap, our legs tangled. Out of necessity, not choice, we sat facing each other, knees touching, eating crisps from a shared packet, both pretending not to notice every inch of contact. "You all right?" he asked. Finally, voice low. "Yeah, just tired." It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the truth either. The truth was I wasn't scared of being stuck out here. I was scared of what it meant to be alone with him. Scared of how close we already were. Scared of how much I wanted to close that gap and what might happen if I did. "Funny," Callum said, tossing a crisp into his mouth. "You always used to fill every silence." I looked up. "I did not. You did. Uni holidays, remember? You just ramble." It was endearing. "Thanks," I said dryly, glad my nervous chatter had left such a legacy. His eyes crinkled. It did. Something about the way he said it twisted my stomach. Not just the words, but the way he was looking at me, like he meant it, like it mattered. The air was colder now, so we burrowed into the sleeping bag again, trying to act like nothing was different. But this time there was no safety in numbers, noisy group, just the hum of wind outside, the warmth of his body, inches from mine, and the endless pounding of my heart. He lay on his side facing me. I stayed on my back staring at the nylon ceiling, every nerve on edge. You ever think about that night? He asked. Suddenly I blinked. Which one? At Christmas, when we stayed up till 4:00, watching that awful action film. You fell asleep halfway through, head on my shoulder, my cheeks burned. You remember that? Of course I do. The pause that followed was so brief it barely counted as silence, but I felt it pulse between us. You talk in your sleep, you know, he added, voice lighter now. I groaned. Don't. What did I say? He grinned. Nothing embarrassing, just you said my name. My breath caught. You don't have to explain it, he cut in quickly, his tone softer now. It was years ago. Except I wasn't going to explain it. I didn't even know how to. I've thought about that night too, I admitted. Barely above a whisper. He didn't reply right away, and when I risked a glance, his eyes were already on me, warm, unreadable. You're doing that thing again, he murmured. What thing? Thinking too hard. I can hear it. I laughed. Nervous. Sorry, it's just a lot. He shifted slightly closer, the sleeping bag rustling, his hand brushing against mine. Not deliberate, or maybe it was. Either way, neither of us moved. I always wondered, he said quietly, if you ever wanted something different. What do you mean? He hesitated, then let out a slow breath. From us, from me. My throat tightened. The air inside the tent felt thinner, too warm, too tight. I said I do. It slipped out before I could stop it. Not a grand confession, not even a full sentence, but enough. Callum didn't react at first, then gently, so gently I could have imagined it, he slid his fingers between mine. My chest clenched. I couldn't look at him, couldn't speak. I just let the silence expand, stretching between us like a held breath. His thumb brushed the back of my hand. Me too, he whispered. My whole body vibrated on the edge of something, trembling with it, and then he did something I didn't expect. He shifted closer, forehead pressing lightly against mine. Not a kiss, not yet, just contact, intentional, intimate. Is this okay? He asked. I nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. We stayed like that for what felt like hours, though it was probably just minutes, breathing the same air, sharing the same warmth, my hand in his, my heart threatening to split open. I didn't know what would happen after this. I didn't know what we were becoming, but I knew one thing: I didn't want to go back to pretending. Warmth of his forehead lingered long after he drew away. Eventually we rolled onto our backs again, side by side, fingers still lightly linked beneath the sleeping bag, not holding hands, in a way that screamed some things changed, but not in a way that meant nothing either, just suspended, like the moment itself wasn't quite finished. Neither of us spoke. The air inside the tent thickened with unspoken thoughts. Neither of us dared to cut through. I kept stealing glances at him from the corner of my eye, searching for signs of regret, but all I saw was his chest rising and falling, his brow faintly drawn, like he was lost in his own thoughts. Maybe I should have said something, but I didn't want to break whatever this was, this fragile, careful thing we'd stepped into. My heart was still thurring too loud in my ears to think straight. Then he spoke, voice so soft it felt like the tent walls weren't meant to hear it. You're being quiet again. I swallowed. So are you, he hummed, the sound vibrating faintly in his throat. Suppose I don't know what I meant to say next. I turned my head toward him. Neither do I. His eyes met mine, not just a glance, an actual look, steady, honest, like he was trying to read something written in me. And I wasn't sure I'd written it clearly enough. It's not like this is something we've ever talked about, he murmured, because I didn't think I was allowed to. The words tumbled out too fast, too raw. I hadn't planned to say it, I hadn't even planned to speak at all, but the words had been lodged in my chest for far too long. Callum's brow creased. What do you mean? I hesitated, my hands trembled, my breath faltered. You're my cousin's friend, you're you. I didn't think you'd ever look at me like that. And I didn't want to ruin anything by hopping. He was quiet for a moment, eyes searching mine. Do you really think I haven't looked at you like that? I don't know. I let out a humorless laugh. I've spent years convincing myself I imagined it. He shifted, sitting up on one elbow, his outline traced in faint blue moonlight seeping through the tent. You didn't, he said. Softly, the air left my lungs. I sat up, too, mirroring him. We were inches apart. Now no blankets or shadows to blur the distance, just space, fragile and filled with everything unsaid. Callum, my voice cracked. This can't just be a one-time thing. Not for me, it's not, he said too quickly. Then he rubbed the back of his neck, eyes flicking away before finding me again. I didn't say anything before, because I didn't want to make things weird with your family, with everything. We've always been in the same circle. I thought if I crossed a line you'd pull away. I stared at him, heart hammering. You really thought that? His gaze softened. I didn't want to lose you. My throat tightened. I was already losing myself, pretending I didn't feel anything. His hand brushed my knee under the sleeping bag, barely a touch but grounding. I think, he began slowly, I've always felt something. I just didn't know how to say it, and then it got easier not to. I nodded, tears stinging at the corners of my eyes. It's scary, isn't it? He nodded back. Terrifying. Silence settled again, but this time it felt different, not empty, not hesitant, just full of everything we'd finally admitted, and the weight of it between us. You were always just there. I whispered at family things, birthdays, holidays. I used to dread them until I knew you'd be coming. His lips curved into the faintest smile. I used to hope I'd sit next to you. I laughed shakily, my chest aching with relief, disbelief, and emotions I didn't even have names for. This feels unreal. He leaned in a little. It doesn't to me. And that was it, the moment, the break in the tension, the breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding for years. I didn't think. I just moved, closed the last inches, and pressed my forehead to his again, only this time he didn't pull away. His hand cupped my cheek, tentative but steady, his thumb brushing across my skin like it belonged there. I let my eyes fall shut. I've wanted to do this for so long, I whispered. So have I. And then his lips found mine. It wasn't rushed, it wasn't desperate. It was soft, careful, like we both knew exactly how fragile this was, but it was real. It was warm. It was him. All the quiet affection I'd buried for years bloomed into something tangible. I melted into it, my fingers clutching lightly at the fabric of his shirt like I was afraid he might disappear. He deepened the kiss slightly, one hand sliding to the back of my neck. His touch wasn't demanding, it was reassuring, steady, like he was telling me everything he hadn't said with words. When we finally pulled back, I kept my eyes closed for a moment, afraid to lose the feeling. You okay? He asked softly. I nodded. Better than okay. When I opened my eyes, he was still watching me with that same look, the one I'd imagined too many times to count. Except now it was real, no second guessing. No more pretending. I meant what I said. He added, this isn't just a night. I don't want it to be, I replied, my voice steady this time. He leaned in again, not to kiss me but to rest his forehead against mine. We'll figure it out, yeah. I smiled. Yeah. We lay back down together, tangled now not just by circumstance but by choice. He pulled the sleeping bag higher around us, his arm slipping over my waist, fingers brushing under my t-shirt to rest lightly against the skin of my back. Just touch, just connection. I'd spent years dreaming about this, and for the first time I wasn't afraid to admit it. Waking up next to him felt like something out of a dream I'd once been too scared to have. His arm was still wrapped around me, heavy and warm. His breath moved slow and steady against the back of my neck, grounding me in the present, reminding me that last night had really happened, that we had really happened. I didn't move for a while. I just lay there, letting the early light creep through the seams of the tent, painting gold across the fabric. I felt every inch of where we touched, the press of his thigh against mine, the curve of his fingers at my waist, the quiet rhythm of his breathing. There was nothing tense about the silence now, no more hesitations or what-ifs, just a quiet kind of knowing. Still, my heart fluttered nervously as I whispered, "Are you awake?" He grunted, shifting. His voice was rough with sleep. Barely. I turned to face him. His eyes blinked open slowly, hazy at first, then softening the second they landed on me. "Hi," he said. I smiled. "Hi." For a moment we just looked at each other, no masks, no pretending. Then he reached up, fingers brushing lazily through my hair. "You always look this annoyingly pretty in the morning." I laughed, cheeks warming. "You're one to talk, I'm just saying." He teased with a sleepy grin, "If we're doing the whole waking up together thing now, you should have warned me you were a menace to my self-esteem." I nudged him with my knee. "You're impossible and you're blushing," he said, clearly pleased with himself. I groaned and buried my face against his chest. "Shut up." His hands moved slowly up and down my back, lazy and soothing. "You're cute when you're embarrassed." Then his lips pressed lightly to the top of my head, and for a moment the world felt impossibly small, just the two of us, cocooned in warmth, tangled up in something that finally made sense. Then, more quietly, he murmured, "This feel right, doesn't it?" I nodded against him. "Yeah, it really does." He shifted, so we were nose to nose again, his fingers still resting gently on my back. "So what now?" I let out a slow breath. "Honestly, I haven't thought that far ahead. I was too busy convincing myself this would never happen." "Well, it did," he said firmly, "and I don't want it to be just a weekend thing. I want more." His eyes were serious now, open, vulnerable, and that struck me most. He wasn't just caught up in the moment, he meant it. I traced a small circle on his chest with my fingertip, watching his skin twitch beneath my touch. "There will be things we'll have to figure out, my cousin," for when he groaned. "Yeah, awkward, but we don't have to tell anyone right away," I said. "We can just see how this goes between us." He nodded. "I'd like that." The silence that followed was soft, of unspoken agreement, the kind that made words feel almost unnecessary. Then he added, "I think I knew I was done for the night. You made me watch that awful horror film and kept jumping into my lap every 5 minutes." I snorted. "I did not jump into your lap. You absolutely did. You practically used me as a human shield." I rolled my eyes, grinning. "You loved it." He raised an eyebrow. "I didn't hate it. See," I teased, "I've always been irresistible." He laughed, pulling me closer. "All right, calm down, Casanova." For a moment we just lay there in easy silence, limbs tangled, hearts slower now but still tuned to each other. I felt light, like something heavy had been lifted, like I could finally breathe again. Eventually he tilted his head, eyes trailing lazily over my face. "Do you think we'll make it work?" "I think we've already made it through the hardest part," I admitted softly. He leaned in, kissing me again, slower this time, deeper, like a promise. "I've liked you for a long time," he said. Against my lips. "I know," I whispered back. "I think I always knew." He rested his forehead against mine, our breaths mingling in the small space between us. "Can I take you out properly when we're home?" he asked, "like an actual date?" My heart swelled. Yeah, I'd like that. He grinned. Brilliant, I've got loads of terrible restaurant choices saved. Just for this moment. Oh good, I laughed. I was hoping you'd feed me bad pasta and then try to kiss me with garlic breath. He rolled on top of me, playful now, pinning me with a grin. You'll love every second of it. I didn't doubt it, because whatever came next. Awkward family conversations, messy logistics, figuring out how we fit in the real world, none of it mattered as much as this, us here starting something real together. Back home, everything felt louder. The buzz of traffic outside my window, the clatter of dishes downstairs, the hum of ordinary life slipping back into place. It was strange how quickly the weekend turned into memory, like waking from a vivid dream that still lingered on my skin, and yet he was still here, not just in my head, not just in texts or a passing smile across a family barbecue, but right beside me on the park bench, near my street, his shoulder warm against mine, his fingers brushing my knuckles every so often, like he couldn't quite stop himself. We'd met here after his shift, nothing fancy, just two guys, takeaway coffees in hand, talking about nothing and everything while the sun dipped lazily behind rows of red brick houses, the kind of evening that didn't need dressing up to feel perfect. I keep thinking your cousin's going to show up out of nowhere and drag me off by the ear, he said with a crooked grin. I laughed. Yeah, well, let's maybe not mention the whole tent situation just yet. No need, he already thinks I snore loud enough to scare off wildlife. I raised a brow. You do? Oi, he bumped his knee against mine. You didn't seem to mind when you were curled up against me like a sleepy koala. I was cold, I lied too quickly. He smirked. Sure you were. But then his gaze softened, lingering on me longer than it needed to. I miss it already. Me too, I admitted, quieter now. Everything had felt simpler there, like it was just us. He nodded, taking a slow sip of coffee, then setting it on the bench beside him. His fingers brushed mine again, more deliberate this time. I've been thinking, he began, about how we make this real. I don't want it to fade just because the trip's over. I looked down at our hands, close, nearly touching but not quite. My heart thudded quietly in my chest. You're not scared, I asked. He paused, terrified. He said, but I'd regret it forever if I didn't try. Wouldn't you? I met his eyes, saw the way they shimmered in the fading light, not with doubt but hope. Yeah, I said I would. Slowly, deliberately, I turned my hand and linked our fingers together. He looked down at them, then back at me, and that smile, small but radiant, spread across his face like sunlight after rain. Not flashy, not loud, just right. We sat like that for a while, our joined hands resting between us, a quiet sign of something beginning, something real. Then he said, there's a gallery opening next weekend, tiny indie place probably, full of weird abstract sculptures that look like broken kettles. Wanna go with me as your boyfriend? His ears flushed pink. Well, yeah, if you want. I leaned into him a little more. I want. He beamed. Brilliant, just promise not to mock the art too loudly. I'll be trying to look sophisticated. No promises, I grinned. A pair of kids raced past on scooters, followed by tired-looking dad yelling something about dinner. The world moved on around us, full of ordinary things, and yet this moment felt quietly extraordinary. Because in its simplicity, a coffee, a bench, a hand held without fear, it meant everything. He squeezed my hand gently, then leaned his head against mine. You still never gave me back that hoodie, he murmured. I smirked. Maybe I'll keep it, then I'll just have to come over and steal it back. I glanced sideways at him. You'd better. I sleep better when it smells like you. He turned toward me, eyes soft with something I still couldn't quite believe was mine. This isn't going to be easy, Is it? No, I said honestly, but I think. The hard part was not having you. His thumb brushed lightly over mine and he leaned in, pressing the gentlest kiss too. My temple. It wasn't grand, it wasn't rushed, it was ours. We sat there long after the light faded, our shadows stretching out behind us on the pavement like quiet promises, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of what came next because he was beside me and we were just getting started. Thanks for watching.